Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Midnight Mass, Book 7, Revelation, the final episode in the Midnight Mass miniseries available exclusively on Netflix. This is the final episode of my episode-by-episode recap of Midnight Mass. Before I get into this episode, I will be most likely doing the episode-by-episode recap of Mike Flanagan's upcoming series Midnight Club, which will also be on Netflix. So that comes out October 7th, so the Tuesday after will be the first episode. That is the plan. So if you enjoyed this show, stay tuned for that episode-by-episode recap when that comes out, because I've been watching other Mike Flanagan stuff, and I enjoy his stuff. Despite the fact I've had some problems with this season, obviously, I vocalized them in previous episodes, but in all, I did enjoy it. You know, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. And the thing about doing these episode recaps and breakdowns is that I'm watching every episode under a microscope. And as long as the episode doesn't get in direct sunlight, that sampling will not explode in my face. But I will see every detail and every flaw. And also, it's the first time I've watched a Mike Flanagan piece of work, so I've kind of gotten to know his style in a lot of ways. And with all that said, let's get this show. Obviously, for those that aren't familiar, I will be spoiling this episode. So if this is your first episode of this show that you are dipping into, I'd highly recommend watching the miniseries Midnight Mass on Netflix and subscribe and listen to this show from the first episode. Either way, I'm going to be spoiling episode 7, a.k.a. book 7 of Midnight Mass, titled Revolution. Let's get into it, shall we? This episode starts off, obviously the end of last episode was the Midnight Mass of Easter service, where there was a bit of mass poisoning going on at the church. Everybody who had been receiving communion then drank a cup of poison, leading to them dying, leading to them coming back as a vampire. Although the term vampire is never mentioned in this show, they do act, and the rules of them are very vampirish. Obviously, the vampire that caused all this, they referred to as an angel. But those were the events of the last episode. Everybody in the church basically drinking the Kool-Aid, as it were. The cult members drinking the Kool-Aid. And, it, you know, as opposed to all of the other times in the history of mankind where people drank the poison, this time they actually did come back. But they came back in a way maybe not as intended. So anyway, this episode starts off with Miss Gunning, formerly old lady Miss Gunning, now young lady Miss Gunning, waking up. Of course, she had just been attacked. She shot Monsignor Pruitt in the head, right in the forehead, and the angel attacked her, flying her outside of the church. So this episode starts with her waking up at the front of the church. Of course, having had not only drinking the blood and the communion that caused her to get younger and her cells to regenerate, but obviously allowing her to survive or to reincarnate after the vampire, quote unquote, kills her. So she's realiving on the front of the church, and she goes inside of the church, where you see the church just covered in blood, soaked in blood everywhere, handprints, bloody handprints everywhere. Obviously, the carnage that happened at the church is evident. There's evidence everywhere. We see Monsignor Pruitt sitting on the stage. Clearly, he is back to normal. As Miss Keene said, he will be better. He will come back from this after being shot in the head. So he is probably still a little out of it. You know, there's probably still neurons reconnecting in his brain. But he is sitting on the church. the stage of the church. Miss Gunning sits next to him, and he asks if it hurt, if he hurt her, if the angel hurt her, if he's responsible for hurting her, and she said yes. And he's not very happy about what. Clearly, things got out of control. It's like he's waking up after a long night of partying, and he's wondering what went wrong, where did it all go wrong. And his friend, Miss Gunning, who, he clearly was super happy to see her earlier and tell her the truth earlier on in the season, he is sad that he caused her pain. And then we cut to like a montage, basically, all these new vampires that are kind of acting zombie-ish. They're almost like zombie vampires, kind of, because they are breaking into homes, attacking all of the people on the island that were not at church service because they are hungry and they are out to feed. And there is a hunger inside them that apparently is immediate. Sometimes, like, it took Monsignor a while to really get the hunger. Riley even, took him a little bit of orientation time before he start feeling the hunger. But all these churchgoers are immediately hungry, and they're feeding, and they're breaking into homes, and they're attacking people on the island. Meanwhile, the survivors, the few people that snuck out the back of the church, Erin, the sheriff, Sarah, Riley's mom, Leeza Warren, they're over at, I believe, Sarah's house. And the sheriff is freaking out. Obviously, things really went a bit crazy at the church. And he knows that Sarah's been studying these things and is hopeful that she has some kind of fix, which she doesn't. She's been able to justify what's been going on scientifically, but hasn't had the opportunity to really do any studies or find any kind of cures. So that's a bit out of the scope of a viable opportunity for them to kind of avoid any further carnage on the island. But they do realize that the boats were not sunk. They were just sabotaged. They were just had a few cables unplugged and whatnot. They were basically just rendered immobile, and that was by design. They realize that the churchgoers intend, Miss Keene and Monsignor Pruitt, they intend on using those boats to then spread the miracle of the Lord to the mainland. Otherwise, they could have just sank the boats. But they didn't, so they realize that. And they start handing out knives. The sheriff has a few bullets left for his gun, and Erin's handing out knives to everybody. Protection against the undead. And of course, Riley's mom has some well-placed logic to interject into this situation.
What's any of this gonna do? The guns and knives. They get back up. You saw this isn't the way. This is never the way.
Maybe not. Maybe it buys us a few more minutes. A few more minutes alive. And it might come down to just minutes. Maybe seconds.
So Riley's mom also mentions, like, all these people who believe in heaven, right? No matter what, when it comes down to the final moments of somebody's life, when their life is being threatened, even though heaven exists and they believe in it being a paradise, they still scratch and scrape for more minutes, more seconds to be alive, which I always found very interesting, the religious people who are also afraid of death. It's like, if you really believe that stuff, wouldn't you be comforted with death? Wouldn't you be welcoming death? Although I think probably most Christians realize that they don't actually follow the teachings. They're actually horrible people, especially a lot of people now that are kind of encouraging, trying to fast forward life into the end times, being horrible people in order to fast forward humanity into the end times. Anyway, so some good points there from Riley's mom, and some interesting thoughts on just that whole stuff. And then, of course, a Molotov cocktail flies through the window. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do to just try and survive. The plan is to kind of get rid of the boats, obviously, and the kids are going to go to the canoe and try to get off the island at least, because, they need to do something. And just as that happens, Molotov cocktail comes through the window, and of course we see outside the people throwing these balls of fire into Sarah's home are none other than Miss Keene, and Sturge, trying to burn them out because, that's what Christians do. That's Miss Keene, I gotta say, one of the most despicable characters in anything I've ever seen. An amazing actress. She's been in other Mike Flanagan stuff, and not to this extent. Amazing, because I absolutely hate her. I think she embodies the worst aspects of what a Christian Karen is in our society nowadays. So, like, as far as, like, a evil villain of a show, she embodies that wholeheartedly. And she is there trying to burn them out, despite children being in the house, knowingly. She doesn't care. They've had communion. She knows. So trying to burn them out. She's trying to call Erin out because she's got, she doesn't like Erin. But Riley's mom holds Erin back, tells her no. She's like, I will distract her while you guys go out the back, right? I have some words for Miss Keene. I have some things I need to drop on this bitch right now. So Riley's mom goes outside instead, and it is just great.
Bev, I want you to listen to me. Because your whole life, I think you've needed to hear this. You aren't a good person.
Well, that was uncalled for.
God doesn't love you more than anyone else. You aren't a hero. And you certainly aren't a victim.
Literally my favorite moment of the show. One of my favorite moments of the show. Finally a character rising to the moment to put Miss Keene in her place. Telling her off in the best way, that you are not special. That God does not love you more than anybody else. Meanwhile, the house that Miss Keene, religious Christian follower Miss Keene, set ablaze, is burning behind Riley's mom. I love that moment so much. I was like, oh, I love Riley's mom now. Very few characters I actually liked, and this last episode, I have to say, I warmed up to a lot of characters. It wraps everything up nice. I really enjoyed how this episode ends. And this moment was one of those things of this episode, one of those aspects of this episode that really made me fall in love with not only this episode, but the show in general. It's like, okay, like I'm watching this show, I'm just like, oh, it's disgusting. I'm like, had a childhood of what it was like being around these Christians that act like Miss Keene and act like these fake people that pretend to care, but are that's just like, will take any chance to look down and speak down on anybody and exclude anybody and judge people. So for Riley's mom to go out there and do that. Also to free everybody up inside, distract them from what's going on so they can escape. And as soon as Miss Keene and Sturge realize she's just distracting them, she further distracts them by just cutting. She has a knife, obviously, cuts her own throat. Brutal. But vampires so hungry, willing to succumb to their hunger, Miss Keene and Sturge start to feed on the blood that's just pumping out of Riley's mom's neck, and allowing them to, obviously, the rest of the people to escape. Cut to Monsignor Pruitt talking with Miss Gunning, talking about a story, as so often happens in this show, about when he was a child. He went on just on a trip, and there was this waterfall, and he was thinking about God and thinking about how God knows every time somebody dies, and if every drop of water in that waterfall was symbolized a death that God could feel, that God was constantly just being bombarded by a waterfall of death constantly, and how when he was changed by the angel that kind of stopped because there was undead. You were able to live forever, and how that changed, that stopped the waterfall from happening. Kind of an interesting comparison. And again, the show, a lot of monologues, a lot of stories to answer questions, but also kind of goes along with the whole Bible stuff, how the Bible is just stories and all that. But an interesting story, again, from Pruitt. And he also talks about, why he brought the angel back to the island. His intention was to save Miss Gunning and to save her daughter, which we find out is his daughter. So Joe in a previous episode mentioned how there were rumors of him being, having a kid on the side, and that maybe that Father Paul was that kid. But we find out that no, Dr. Sarah was that kid, which explains why Monsignor Pruitt would constantly stare at her. Not because she was gay, but because he knew that was his daughter, that he couldn't verbalize. He couldn't be part of her life. And he apologizes to Miss Gunning. He says he would have given up everything. He would have given up the church if she had asked him to, and she couldn't ask him to, and didn't want to hurt the people or whatever were involved, and couldn't have asked him to do that. But an interesting kind of more information that kind of fills in some gaps in a lot of ways. And interesting that she was, and after hearing that, they do look related as far as casting goes, aside from Monsignor Pruitt, Father Paul's performance, which is amazing. I would say his performance is A+, and Miss Keene is right next to him as far as the two best performances of this entire series by far. But as far as look-wise, facial structure, bone structure in the skull area, Sarah does look like Father Paul, which is interesting. Very interesting. But we find that out. And so that explains the rumors. That explains the staring. Cut to the survivors escaping, going through the streets of the town as people are screaming, being killed, being eaten, being fed upon. You have the sheriff firing off a couple shots. Firing off a shot at one of the altar boys. It's like, oh, you smell good, right? They know they're the bait. They know that they are what's on the menu. Shoots the altar boy, shoots the mayor. Of course, they're not dead, but it's just slowing him down. But he runs out of bullets anyway. And we see a woman run out of her home. She gets attacked by the angel, flown away. And it's like zombie attacks. A lot of it. It's very, very much like vampire zombies. And they end up splitting up. The two kids run off, Leeza and Warren. And then Sheriff, Erin, and the doctor run a different direction. So they split up. Probably not the best thing to do in a horror show, but they do it nonetheless. And that was kind of, I think, the point. I think the plan is for the kids to go to the canoe, and for the rest of them to take care of the boats. So you cut to we cut to the house, Sarah's house on fire, Miss Keene and Sturge outside of the house, and they're seeing the fire spread, and they're talking about how there was a fire in the past and everything burned down except for the church. The church is going to be our ark. And Miss Keene is kind of keen on the idea of the fire.
The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all of the green grass was burned up. As for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, idolaters, and all of the liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. Let it burn. Let all of it burn.
So instead of trying to put the fire out, which Sturge had the idea, of course, Miss Keene, with the Bible verse to explain and to justify the most horrific actions, whether it's killing somebody like Father Paul killing Joe, or allowing the fire to spread and burn down the whole house, the whole island, and to kill off all of the unworthy people. Using scripture to justify the most disturbing, horrific, monstrous actions. Leave it to Miss Keene to have those justifications ready to go. And also a good performance by her. Just she's great, man. She, like, as horrible as she is, it's a great, like, for a while watching this show, I just did not like the actress, and like I had to remind myself, like, no, that's just a performance, bro. She's in. I watched the Hill House show. Great, kind of almost like it a little bit more than this because it doesn't have the religious stuff, but she is one of the characters, not a main character, but like watching it was like, oh, there she is, but it's like, oh, she's not Miss Keene. Miss Keene is like that. It's a iconic villain, I would say. Iconic. So let it all burn. Cut to Warren and Leeza break into Joe's RV, his mobile home, because she knows he has that gun hanging up. So they get the gun, they get some ammo, give them some seconds, She's very hopeful. Warren, little worried. Worried that they're not going to survive, and she's like, "We just need to survive. It's just all about we just need to try." Which I kind of like that. I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. Let's take a little break from the show to promote. I have Inspired Disorder Plus. Would you feel good about donating $5 a month to an artist that you want to support? $5 a month is not much, less than a price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. A lot of people would probably say, yeah, Inspired Disorder Plus, people can go, and for $5 a month or $50 for the year, you get access to all of the old podcasts that I've ever done, like 10 different podcasts, hundreds of podcast episodes. You also get access to like special deals. So if you do want to collect my artwork, you get discounts on stuff. Watch this show, binge the full week ad-free for $5 a month. Like, you get benefits for the $5 a month or $50 a year. So it's not like you're just donating $5. There's something, you get something for that. Would you feel good about donating $5 a month to an artist that you want to support? A lot of people would probably say, yeah. Head on over to inspiredddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And now let's get back to the show. Cut to Keene and Sturge then burning down the general store. It's like, well, we're not going to wait for things to burn down. We're going to actively keep burning stuff down, throwing our Molotov cocktails. I mean, we made these Molotov cocktails. Might as well use them all, right? Sturge. Let's burn it all down. Cut to then Riley's parents reuniting. Both dead now. They are the afterlife. And discussing their hunger, how they both feel hungry, but they know that it's wrong, so they're denying the hunger. They're not allowing themselves to succumb to the hunger, which I kind of feel almost like that moment is a shot at Riley. Like, because so much of this show is comparing the hunger that vampires have for blood to that humans have, that hunger people have for addiction. and how, I guess it's true, some people aren't able to ignore the hunger, ignore the pull, the draw of addiction. Some people are able to overcome that, but Riley was weak. It just knowing the dad's view of Riley and how he always thought the worst of his son, for him then to be like, oh, addiction's not that bad, you just got to stop doing it. Kind of a bummer taken in that way. I don't know if it's meant to be taken in that way, but it is nice that both of them are kind of the example that you can have that hunger, but you don't have to succumb to being an evil person to satisfy that hunger, while everybody around them is causing chaos, acting like zombies, just going crazy. So an interesting scene, and it can be taken different ways. Anyway, cut to you have Sarah, Erin, and the sheriff. They see that the island, that things are on fire. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why are they burning everything down? Like, the structures these vampires need during the daytime to protect them from the sun are no longer going to be there. So it doesn't make any sense to them, which definitely makes a lot of sense to me that it doesn't make sense. But then again, I think mainly it's Miss Keene not caring and would rather excuse her bad behavior with scripture and just going along with that than actually thinking through. She should really leave it up into God's hands, as she would think, even though she's actively contributing to everything burning down, not really really forcing the hand of God, as it were, assuming that their actions are the actions of God, which is sadly how a lot of Christians tend to think. So anyway, they see the things burning. They're getting their gas. They're at the pumps by the docks. They're getting all the gas cans. They're soaking all the boats with gasoline to burn them down, so nobody can get off the island. And they talk about what happened to the kids. Like, Sarah's like, I want to believe that they are successful. Like, they're just convincing themselves. Like, they kind of know that they're on a suicide mission in a lot of ways, that the chances of them surviving are very limited, and the chances of the kids surviving are very limited as well. But she wants to believe that they survive. And that's, having a hopeful thought is definitely something that can help motivate you, especially if you're kind of destined to be gone anyway. It makes you feel good to kind of push on and continue doing the best you can at the hopes that it will be for good. It will be for those kids, that when the sun rises, they will be the only survivors, as it were. So that's an interesting aspect to it. We cut to Warren and Leeza. They're running down the street, and they hear Leeza's parents calling for them, out searching for them. So they go hide in the same house that the angel was hiding in, the one that the angel brought Bull into. They go into that house to hide as they see Leeza's parents going down the street looking for him. And they smell something. They see that the house is full of past meals that the vampire had, the angel had. And the angel is currently feeding on somebody. But one thing we notice about the angel, that when it's feeding, it can't be bothered with anything, because Leeza goes to shoot the angel. First off, the angel doesn't care that they're in there to begin with, and then she actually shoots the angel. Doesn't even phase the angel at all while it's feeding. So it's, I guess, a convenient aspect to the character of the angel is that when it's feeding, it can't be bothered with anything else that's going on around it. But that being said, they decide, since the gun doesn't do anything, they decide to douse the house with gasoline leading a trail out the door, and they light it up on fire, burning the house, and you hear the squealing of the angel as it's set on fire, come bursting out of the door, flying away. So they weren't able to kill it, but apparently fire is something that will stop the angel from feeding. That's for sure. And as they light the fire, Sturge down the street sees them and calls them, which makes them run away because they know. And Sturge goes and picks up the gun. Apparently they left the gun as they ran away. And Sturge is with two other people, and he tells them, it's like, make sure, spread the word. We need to tell everybody to meet at the church before dawn. Obviously, they have no idea what will happen when the sun comes up. All of these new vampires that never got their orientation. Sturge does know, so in an attempt to try and get everybody to know that they have to go hide out during daytime to meet at the church before dawn. Cut to Miss Keene is in the rec room. All of the beds are already set up. So, like, the whole rec room thing, it's convenient, right? It's convenient that she laundered all that money from the oil spill to build a rec room that is way oversized, as if she knew that it would be housing vampires at some point in the future. Regardless, obviously she wouldn't have known. She never would have known that it would have been used, but now it's been used. All of the beds are set up and made, like with blankets, candles are lit. Like, it's all like she just went from burning houses down to immediately went to the rec room and set up all these cots, which who knows where they stored all the cots, but the whole, like, there's beds everywhere. It's all prepared for everybody for when the sun comes up. And then she goes over to the church to ring the bell to kind of like signal everybody to get back to the church. And when she's over at the church to ring the bell, after she rings the bell, she sees Monsignor Pruitt talking to Miss Gunning, which she's surprised because Miss Gunning just shot him in the head. And she's like, oh, it's surprised you apologized, but I guess you would. You're a good guy, you know. Apologize to her for shooting you in the head. And he's asking her, like, oh, so you let everybody out? Like, he's realizing now that his plans were completely jettisoned for Miss Keene to go rogue and just do what she wants. She's like, yep, we're just going to leave it into God's hands. And they all walk outside. And, she gives Mr. Pruitt, he sees everything going on, and he makes the comment that he realizes that in that moment that they are the wolves amongst the sheep, that they are the ones that were wrong. All of the violence and destruction that are happening are because of their actions. Whereas Miss Keene is fine justifying her actions with Bible scriptures, just avoiding any kind of responsibility for her actions, just justifying them as God's will. She, in contradiction to that, Monsignor Pruitt is realizing the error of his ways. And because of that, it's not about me, it's about God, where, everything with Miss Keene is about her, but acting like it's about God. And Miss Keene, being the person she is, always having a biblical excuse for her to hate or hurt or do horrible things. Now that she has a disagreement with Monsignor Pruitt, she has another Bible verse right at the ready.
Jesus himself, he warned us against the scribes, against the priests in Matthew. Do not call anyone on earth Father. You have one Father, and he is in heaven. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, vipers brood. But you, Monsignor. Monsignor Pruitt, did it have to be true of you?
Miss Keene and her constant justification for the worst things, attacking Monsignor Pruitt now. Right? She's a little sad that she has to do what she has. It's like, oh, they were right. There is only one Father. How dare we follow priests shouldn't exist, which is kind of interesting. Which is kind of something, you know, despite all of her negative aspects to her justifications and quoting scripture, it is interesting that the Bible says that, and then, you know, churches exist, priests exist, and they get paid. You know, they don't work for free. It is the job. They're entertainers, really. They're entertainers. They go on a stage. They get paid a fee to entertain. You know, they encourage people, forcibly encourage people to donate money, a certain percentage of money every week, every year. So in that way, I kind of agree with her. But they find out that Sturge shows up and tells her that they burned the boats. And she's like, oh, no, like realizing that her master plan of spreading to the mainland isn't going to work. And she's like, well, we'll have Warren just call the ferries back in the morning. It'll be or tomorrow night or tomorrow. So they can come back and will take us there tomorrow night or whatever. And then she asks, wait, they who? Which obviously she should know who they is. There's only a few people she knows who are actively trying to do things, the survivors that ran away, that she tried to burn out of the house. So she shouldn't be that surprised with who, but it was kind of a funny moment. Cut to Warren and Leeza. They get to the canoe, and Leeza prays for her parents. Warren is realizing that his parents are dead, that his parents are gone. Kind of a touching moment where they, you know, are kind of realizing the reality of their situation as they get to the canoe. And then back at the church, all of the people start coming to the church. All the people who have been changed. Some people who have been saved, apparently. One guy who was saved by Sturge. Miss Keene isn't too keen on the fact that he was one of them. He was one of the quote-unquote people he chose. She's, you know, she wants to be the one in charge of who can be saved and who can't be saved. And in typical Keene fashion, she has some words, some horrible words for this guy who's very confused.
I don't think I ever saw you at Mass a day in your life. And yet, you were blessed tonight, weren't you? Saved. Baptized, I take it. You?
I killed my Julie tonight.
You killed your wife.
And my boys. I killed my boys.
You know, I hate to tell you this, but you could have brought them back. Just as Sturge apparently brought you back, which was something we discussed only doing in rare and specific. It's fine. But yes, you could have saved them. Easily, in fact, if you had been a man of faith.
Just a bit of victim blaming there. It's like, oh, yeah, well, you could have saved them really easily, actually. But since you didn't come to church, you weren't a faithful person. Not that, like, anybody who went to church was actually orientated like Monsignor Pruitt wanted them to. So he may not have actually known that he could have saved them, really, you know. So, but she taking every opportunity to trash somebody, to demonize somebody, to talk down to somebody. She had zero problem being an absolutely horrible person to this guy who's absolutely confused, has no idea. He was killed by Sturge and then brought back to life by drinking his blood. And then he then killed his family because he didn't know the hunger within him was like, he just was overcome by it. Like, horrible situation. And then to be treated like that by Miss Keene just, just again shows this episode really shows it's the highlight of Miss Keene, of her horribleness. And so she rejects him. There's not enough room for you. Why don't you go? Sturge starts to walk him to the shore because obviously he doesn't know that sunlight's going to kill them. Most of the people there don't know that sunlight's going to kill them. So having Sturge walking him to the shore is like, oh, we're going to put you down. You're not going to know that this is going to kill you. But I'm going to pretend like we're buddies about it. And of course, Monsignor Pruitt, seeing how horrible this is and how unchristian this is, invites everybody into the church. It's like, how could we say this is a house of the Lord if we don't accept everybody? Right? Still, like, he is, unlike Miss Keene, is like how a lot of the vocalized, hateful Christians act in our society today, where they act very unchristian, where they use the Bible as a weapon to attack people they don't feel are worthy. And then you have Monsignor Pruitt, who is definitely more somebody who tries to follow in the path of Jesus and tries to live by those teachings and actually thought he was doing something good and isn't really there to judge and trying to help people. Like, he's actually trying to do good. So he opens up to the church to everybody. And as he walks in to the church, he sees Sarah pouring gas on the stage. And they're both like, she's obviously surprised because, like, oh shit, the head vampire guy that my mom shot in the head is alive. And then Monsignor Pruitt's like, oh shit, my daughter is about to burn the church down. And they have a great moment. Like, a lot of great things happen in this episode. I gotta say, this episode justifies a lot of this show. And there's this scene, like, he sees his daughter. He's, tells her immediately, he's like, go out the back. Like, he's immediately on her side. Like, go out the back. I'll push the candle over and you run out the back. And she's like, yeah, that was kind of the point. And he's like, starts to talk about how proud he was. He's like, I wish I could have told you how proud I am. Like, she clearly doesn't know, but I think in this conversation, she begins to realize that, oh, that is my dad. Probably a lot of mind-blowing things for her in this very moment, where she's realizing that, like, oh, that's my dad. Also, like, how is he so young? Like, I thought, wait. And then also, I don't know. It's just mind-blowing. I would imagine in her being in her shoes, in Sarah's shoes, like, why is this guy talking about how he's proud of me and how he wish he could have told me and told me he loved me and all of these things. And he apologizing to her, apologizing for not getting to know her. And just in that moment, heartbreaking, Sturge shoots her. She gets shot in the chest. Monsignor turns around, sees it's Sturge, rushes Sturge, attacks him. They go rolling out down the steps of the church, right, trying to choke him. And everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? Why is Father Paul choking this dude? Why is he choking Sturge? And in that moment, gunning goes up. They both go up the stairs, and she sees her daughter shot, laying down. So she screams. Her and Father Paul go to her aid. Father Paul immediately rolls down his sleeves, bites his wrist open, and tries to save Sarah by feeding her the blood so that she can come back as a vampire. But Sarah, not wanting that, spits it up. Very dramatic scene when she spits up the blood, like multiple times, as referenced with Riley, how he spit up this blessing. He just had no respect for it in such a different way, but similarly, Sarah spitting up this gift that he's trying to give her, this gift of eternal life, even though he knows that it's probably not. He's trying to basically get her to live until sunrise, because eventually, I mean, nothing. They still have the rec room. They still have the church at this moment, but things aren't looking good for the vampires. There's clearly people out there trying to destroy their plans. So she spits up the blood and dies, or he carries her out of the church, and as they exit the church, Miss Gunning knocks a candle over to set the church on fire.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote The Many Faces. That's right, I am also an artist. I do ink paintings on paper of abstract faces. A new face, a new painting gets released every single day over at inspireddisorder.com. So head on over to my website to purchase original artwork directly from the artist. Also, there are prints available for select images. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com, buy original art, buy prints if that's your jam, if you want 8x10 prints on high quality paper. Also, if you're looking to wear some art, there are shirts available with original artwork by myself. Select faces from The Many Faces are also available in t-shirt form. You go to inspireddisorder.com, you buy original artwork, you buy prints, you buy shirts. You're supporting an artist directly. And if you're the type of person that likes to invest in NFTs, there are also NFTs available for select faces. Go to inspireddisorder.com now. And now let's get back to the show.
So now the only building that's salvageable is the rec room, which of course they see the sheriff pouring gas on the outside of the rec room. Probably shouldn't have been on that side of the rec room. Okay, there's all of the people right here. You're gonna burn this rec room down. And he had to have seen all of the people congregated on that side of the rec room. Maybe go on the opposite side of the rec room to pour the gas. But anyway, Miss Keene sees him. Sturge sees him, really. Miss Keene sees him. She picks up the gun, the rifle, Joe's rifle, and then shoots the sheriff in the leg. And, of course, she's calling him a viper, calling him a terrorist, as she is one to be racist. And she's telling him, I'm surprised you didn't wait for us to go while we were inside. Why didn't you burn? Like, basically thinking of all the ways she would have done it, how evil she would have been. Whereas he's just trying to burn the structure down to make sure that they can't survive through the day. So she's talking shit. And then he, when she says, I'm surprised you didn't, you waited for it to be empty. And he's like, oh, is it empty? And just at that moment, we see Erin coming out the front of the rec room, pouring gas. She had been inside the rec room pouring gas. And there's a moment where she gets out of the rec room, she grabs the lighter, she lights the lighter, and then she pauses and looks up in the sky, and just in that moment of pausing, instead of just lighting the thing on fire immediately, she looks because she was distracted by the angel flying at her, attacking her. So now Erin, fire didn't get started. Lighter falls to the ground. Erin is now being fed on by the angel. But Ali shows up, picks up the lighter, and Miss Keene doesn't shoot him. I'm assuming maybe she's out of bullets. No, she still has a bullet. But doesn't shoot Ali. Probably because she knows it's not going to do any good. He's a vampire. But it still would have knocked the lighter out of his hands, but he picks up the lighter, lights it, and then sets the rec room on fire. Does the thing, finishes the job for his dad and for Erin. Which is great. And then the sheriff has a nice little quote for Miss Keene in that moment.
This is verse in the Bible. It's kind of stuck with me. He makes the sun rise on the evil and the good.
He makes the sun rise on the evil and the good, which, of course, she doesn't like that. How dare you use a Bible quote against me? That is my thing. That is what I do. It's so great. And, of course, she shoots him again because Miss Keene is just a horrible person. And she's like, all of their stuff is literally in flames. That she has no way. They have no way to survive now the next day. Things are not looking good for the vampires. And as the angel is feeding on Erin, distracted by everything, Erin picks up the knife she has in her pocket and starts slipping it through the skin of the angel's wings, just cutting it up. And the angel's slightly distracted at what's happening. She pulls the head back down to her neck, which I thought was a great thing where she's like, I know what's happening right now, but I need to use this moment. I need to use these seconds to do something to try and stop this flying beast from getting off the island. And she just starts cutting up slits in this angel's wings, the bat wings, and seeing the knife pierce through the wings. Great practical effects, I believe. It had to have been practical. Great. Just kind of disgusting, a little disturbing. But she cuts the wings, and then the angel flies off. Is still able to fly. Not great, but still able to fly. Not as gracefully as possible. It's struggling a bit. Then we cut to Leeza and Warren are out on the boat, and they see the angel flying away from the island, flying west. Warren mentions flying west, trying to beat the sunrise. And Leeza asks, is he going to make it? Is it going to be able to make it to the mainland? Apparently it's 30 miles. So it's like, he's thinking the best of the situation. I don't think it will make it. I don't think it will survive. I don't think it will beat the sunrise. Cut to Erin laying on the ground, clearly about to die, and she turns to the side and is remembering the conversation that she had with Riley about death. And now she's talking about what she thinks death is from her perspective now. Whereas before, when they had that conversation, she had told what she thought death was, or maybe what she was hopeful of what death was for her fetus that she lost, for Littlefoot. Where before it was the magical Christian version of a family reunion up in the clouds where everything is pure love. That's what she hopes for with her daughter. But in this version of what she thinks happens after we die is far more similar to more depth to it, not as scientific as Riley's description of death, but a very similar, it's very much how I would view death and life and how it's infinite and we're all connected and how, we are just the memory of everything of one of his existences. Like, it's very beautiful. Like, this aspect, as far as all of the long monologues of this show, the monologue of when Riley was talking about death and now with Erin talking about death and what she feels death is, speaking for herself and everything. Like, we are everything and everything is us and we're all just energy and there's no difference between what I am and what I'm touching, and that the electrons are constantly shifting between the two, and ultimately we're all part of the same thing. We all come from and we all return to the same thing. Very beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And of course I didn't clip out that clip, but because it was long, but it's beautiful. If you haven't seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. but a very beautiful way to kind of bring back that moment in a way that makes me like Erin more, because she was more similar to Riley than what she said before. Because what she said before was like a typical kind of like a Christian type of belief of what the afterlife is like, where her explanation of it is more philosophical than Riley's, but similar, abstract, beautiful. And then, sun isn't coming up yet, but it's getting close. And then we see Riley's mom start to sing a hymn. Riley's dad starts joining in. Eventually, all of the people start joining in, singing a hymn, singing a song. You see Sheriff and Ali on the shore praying one last time as his dad is slowly dying from the gunshot wounds. Doing their prayers. Almost the sun rising. You have Monsignor Pruitt and Gunning on the bridge that her daughter liked. This little bridge, that's where they took her. That's their final moments. They give a kiss. They kiss each other as the sun's about to come up. And then you see Miss Keene on the shore, desperate to survive, desperately trying to dig a hole and cover herself with sand to avoid the sunrise, to avoid being burned up, trying to avoid the inevitable and avoid death, real death, permanent death, trying to avoid hell. Let's be honest. Miss Keene has to know. A lot of Christians that know that they are doing the work of the devil in the name of the Lord, using their religious beliefs in God to justify their absolutely disgusting behavior. On some level, they have to know that they aren't going to heaven. Some level. And that's why she is so desperate to avoid death. But it doesn't work. Everybody obviously burns up. And then we see Warren and Leeza in the boat, and this beautiful shot of the sunrise over the island, which there's been a few wide shots of the island throughout this episode, which are all beautiful as different parts of the island are on fire, but now it's the sun rising. And the last words of this series, the last words of this episode of the series, are Leeza in the boat. They're holding hands. She's holding hands with Warren, and she says, "I can't feel my legs." Now, in my opinion, that means that the angel died. It didn't make it. The sun caught the angel. Couldn't make it to the mainland. And in some supernatural horror things, when the main vampire dies, everybody loses their abilities. I've heard other people say that it's it's just the effects of the vampire blood are going away. But I think in that moment, because it seems like it's an instantaneous thing, and would make sense because the sun is rising, if the angel didn't make it to the mainland, that if that vampire died, that everybody that was infected by that vampire would lose the effects of that vampire blood. So she is back to being paralyzed. The effects of it are gone, which I appreciate. My reading of it is that the angel died, which is good because it's a mini-series. It's not like something where there's going to be a season 2. Oh, the angel got away and now it's in New York or wherever. I didn't even know what coast they were on. But I really did enjoy the way the show ended. The way the show started, it was slow. It took a while to kind of get everything going. I didn't like a lot of the characters. As far as the genre of story, I'm not a huge vampire fan. I'm not a fan at all about Christianity or Catholicism, just based on my childhood and early years growing up and seeing the reality of churches and how they run and the people that go there and how absolutely fake they are. How many people are so similar to Miss Keene. That's why it's like, oh, it just has such hate for Miss Keene. But like the way the actress portrays her is perfect. Perfect. Like always justifying the worst behavior with like some kind of Bible verse. And the way it ends, I mean, this last episode definitely brings it all back together and makes me like a lot of the characters, right? You got Riley's mom telling off Miss Keene was amazing. The sheriff being able to quote the Bible back to Miss Keene as justification for her burning up in the sun. Perfect. Loved that. I'm glad that Ali helped complete the dad's mission to burn down that rec room. I love that as well. I kind of like that, you know, Riley's parents, on some level I don't, but on some level I do. I like that they had their reunion and then were able to kind of be like be above the evil, right? They want the best things in some ways. And even Erin, when that last moment when she's, you know, remembering conversation with Riley, but changes where she describes what she thinks death is, made me like Erin a lot more as well. So it definitely made me enjoy the show as a whole quite a bit more. And I'm excited to watch. I've watched Haunting on Hill House, which is amazing. I'm not going to do a recap of that. Maybe I'm not even going to do a review of it. This is my review. It's amazing. It's well written, great storytelling, wraps up. It's like a haunted house show. But Midnight Club, the plan is tentative. I haven't actually started the work on preparing for the show, but the idea that I would like to do is to do an episode by episode recap of Midnight Club. Which is going to be a new miniseries by Mike Flanagan, the guy who created this show, as well as Haunting on Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. He directed Ouija, the movie Ouija, Oculus, Harold's Game, I think it's called. Anyway, so look forward to that. There will be an announcement on this feed for that, if that actually does come to fruition. But thank you, everybody, for watching all the episodes or listening to every episode of this recap show. I'm still kind of figuring out, learning how I want to do these types of shows. It's a very different kind of show than everything else I do, very much more involved. And I hope everybody enjoyed it and look forward to doing more. And if you enjoyed this, I've also done episode recaps of Ted Lasso, Severance, which both are Apple TV Plus exclusives. I've done Squid Game, which is another Netflix exclusive. I've done Dave, which is an FX show. So I've done other TV shows. So if you enjoyed this, go check those out, because I do enjoy doing these. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. But anyway, take care.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.